JMC webinar, welcoming new users, episode 11, streamlining your end of term with JMC teacher. My name is Jake Vanskoy. I'm the head of training here at JMC. Prior to joining JMC, I was a classroom teacher at a small school in Northeast Iowa where I taught high school English, became very familiar with all of JMC's grading processes as a teacher there. And then I progressed into some more office-ended roles, and that's kind of where my path crossed with JMC. It's also where my path crossed with Brian Wall. So, Brian, you want to introduce yourself here?
Sure, thanks, Jake. Yeah, I'm Brian Wall, also a trainer and a client services specialist with JMC, going on 2.5 years now. In my previous life, I also was an educator, 10 years in the classroom as a high school math teacher and coach, and then 24 years as a middle school and high school principal. Retired from that and went to work for JMC.
So we kind of have some perspective on both ends of this, but today we're going to take a look at some next level processes for JMC teacher. If you remember in episode 10 or 9 maybe, we went through all of the things that you would have to do for editing and submitting course grades and standard-based results to the office from the teacher end. Today we're going to look at a few processes that are simple yet effective for expanding your knowledge in that end of the term. So we're going to take a closer look at some of those key tools that help you bring that term to a close, including how publishing works, how to switch your gradebook view to the upcoming term, how to print standards-based report cards directly from JMC teacher, and some helpful tips along the way. So by the end, you'll be ready and confidently managing the transition from one term to the next. As always, built right into Ring Central, we have our Q&A feature. So if you have any questions or need to communicate with either Brian or I, please feel free to enter any of those in that little chat feature and we can talk back and forth. So let's start with preparing student grades for the end of term, and specifically how to handle missing scores at the end of term. So in JMC teacher, as you've been using the scores gradebook, you might have started coding some of your missing work with M or MI or L or LI for late or late included. And now that we've gotten to the end of the grading period and you're no longer accepting late or missing work, you need to convert those late or missing scores to zeros. Now, the manual way would be to go through each one of your courses and change each one of those M's and MI's to zeros. But the streamlined way, or the streamlined approach to that, would be to do this with one click. So we are going to convert missing scores to zeros. Those would be the scores that either have nothing or have an LX or an LI or an M or an MI in the current quarter on assignments up through the date selected, and then change them to zeros, saving you from having to hand enter those zeros for students with missing scores. Use this feature near the end of the term when students can no longer turn in late work for credit. To get started converting those missing scores, we're going to log into JMC Teacher, head to Scores, Convert Missing, 0. So scores, convert missing to 0 right here. Step 1, we'll place a check mark in the Select All Courses checkbox to convert missing scores to zeros in all of your classes. Of course, you could select individual courses if you don't want to select all. To select multiple courses, you can hold down that control key or the command key, depending on what type of computer you're using while clicking those classes. You can deselect a class by holding down those same commands while clicking as well. And then step 3, you would enter the last date of missing scores to make the 0 in the date field, or simply click that calendar icon to change the date in that field here. So what this is looking for is any assignment up through that date. So this date is probably going to be the last day of your term, more than likely. And if you've been adding dates to your assignments as you've been adding them to the grade book, as long as it falls before that date, it will convert the late or missing score to a 0. So fun fact, double check that you've selected the correct courses, because this action is irreversible. And once you are ready, click that execute button and it will convert all of your scores to 0s. So, or I should say all of your missing or late scores. So let's take a live look at converting missing scores to 0s for end of term reporting. First, I'm going to go to the scores, assignment scores page. And you'll notice that for my 4th grade ELA, I've got a few scores here that have missing codes or M's or MI's or have blanks. And I've got those assignments dated. So now we've gotten to the point where, look, I'm no longer going to accept missing work. So I'm just going to do it for this one course. So 4th grade ELA V. Convert missing scores. I'm going to choose that one course there up through this current date. Click execute. Yes, I want to convert those. And then it's letting me know I've got 18 missing records that are converted to 0. So now when I go back to that assignment scores page, see all of those scores that at one time were M's or were blank are now at 0. And if you're wondering why they are showing up in red, it's because my handy preference here under File Preferences, I've decided I wanted to identify any low score that falls below 50%, and I want that to show up in red. So for you, it might not show up as anything. It might just show up as white unless you've changed that setting. Just a handy little way that I can, at a glance at my grade book, see if I have a number of scores that are falling below a certain threshold that I need to pay attention to. So, Brian, anything that you would like to add about the missing scores?
You know, Jake, I think I want to ask a question. You had some missing included scores in there that got converted to 0s. Those missing included scores would have already been calculating as 0s. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep. It just, the codes really are an alert for your families and for your students so that they can look in JMC Family, JMC Student, and see why a score is a certain way. So the missing or the missing included, yes, it is impacting the grade. Showing that it's missing included would indicate that I still have an opportunity to maybe fix it or to turn it in. Once it's been turned in as a 0 or once it's been turned into a 0, to me that suggests a little bit more finality. So there might be some additional communication that you would want to do with your families. Not even going to go down the rabbit hole of whether or not a 0 should weigh in as part of the grade. Philosophically, there have been many debates on that, and I will choose to bite my tongue on this certain presentation for this philosophical discussion. But
for those scores that were just plain missing, not an MI, but just missing, those were not being factored into the grade. So this step of converting those to 0s is an important step if you want that missing assignment to count against that student.
Yeah, and that's something that I don't want to say lulls some folks into a sense of false security potentially. We have a number of these codes, and it's easiest to show them on the File Preferences page. And the codes are an attempt at streamlined communication. You can put a number in the grade book and the number tells a certain story. The code kind of fleshes that out a little bit. If a kid got a 10 out of a 10 on an assignment, you have an idea of whether or not they did well. However, if the score is left blank, there's a number of reasons that score could have been left blank. It might have been left blank because the student turned it in and I am still waiting to correct it or waiting to grade it. So it's on a pile on my desk as a teacher. And rather than field the endless questions about why is this blank, did Johnny not turn this in, or what's going on, I can throw a P in there and it's going to mark it as pending. We've got slots for incomplete assignments, and there is a designation between missing and missing included, because just throwing the code of an M in there, like you suggested, does not necessarily mean it's going to impact the grade until I tell it to. So I can tell it to impact the grade by changing the score, or if I wanted to include it as a 0, it's going to include that missing as a 0 to reflect what the grade would be if that missing work gets converted to a 0. Different teachers have different utilities for those codes, and some choose to use all of them, some choose to use selected. The late works the same. We've got a late exempt, so that's going to keep it out of calculating to the overall grade, and then we have a late included, and that will be included. The exempt, just to kind of flesh this out, you've got a student that might be exempt from a certain assessment. Maybe they've tested out of the assessment. Maybe they were gone and it's impossible to replicate the assessment. So rather than marking it positively or or not positively against a student, you can throw that X in there and it will just not be factored at all. A couple handy utilities for those score codes, and the way that they're used simply is by entering the letter in there. So if I wanted to make this a missing, I'd just put an M in there, and it turns into a missing score.
All right. I don't see any other questions, Jake.
All right. Wonderful. So moving on to communicating student grades with gradebook publishing, and an often asked question, and something that teachers have full control over, and it's very helpful to understand how publishing works so that you're showing your families and students exactly what you intend to show them. Publishing gradebook results through JMC Teacher is an excellent method for keeping everyone informed about a student's academic progress. Just a single click makes all scores from the scores gradebook and the competency-based gradebook available up to the publishing date on progress reports in JMC Office, JMC Family, and JMC Student. Achieve complete transparency in your grading practices by publishing results with JMC Teacher. To bulk publish all gradebook results, head to File, Publish in JMC Teacher. So we're under File, Publish. Step 1, we'll enter a date in the Published Through field, or simply click that calendar icon to publish all assignment scores and formative assessment results through the date that's listed here. Fun fact, assignments and formative assessments dated prior to the Published Through date will be visible on JMC Office, JMC Family, and JMC Student progress reports, giving you control over the results that you are ready to display. Conversely, if the date of the assignment falls outside of that Published Through window, it will not be displayed in JMC Office, JMC Family, and JMC Student. More on that in a little bit here. Step 2, click the Publish button to update progress reports and report card results in JMC Office, JMC Family, and JMC Student. Let's take a live look at communicating student grades by publishing your gradebook. And first, a little about how this whole process works. If you're using a gradebook in JMC, you're calculating that end of term grade right over here on the right side, and it's going to automatically show up on our Edit Course Grades page. This ends up being the grade that you're sharing with the office. This is the grade that's going to be used for report cards. So what happens a lot of the time is teachers throughout the course of the term are marking scores. We're changing M's to zeros. We're adding results, points, and things like that to student work. And periodically as we go, they click this publish button to keep families in the loop and students in the loop as to how they're doing as the term goes. I would say this has replaced the former practice of, families had 2 times in which they knew how their students were doing in the classroom, unless they had parent-teacher conferences, they knew it at midterm, and then they knew it at the end of the term because those midterm report cards and those end of the term report cards told us how the student was doing. Now that we have online grade books and we have these publishing functions, teachers can communicate as you go throughout the term. So it's not a mystery when we get to midterm time or we get to the end of the term how the student is doing. So this is a really powerful communication tool. And as a matter of fact, the schools that are doing this well, some teachers might argue too well, your families become reliant and your students become reliant on checking JMC student and JMC family to see how they are doing. And you know, it's kind of it's a blessing and a curse at a lot of times. And I think most teachers will tell you this. You know, your students become very eager to know how an assignment impacted a grade. So they might be more apt to communicate with the teacher, wanting them to publish those results immediately. And, you know, as teachers, we don't always have time to immediately grade assignments as they're turned in, which is where those aforementioned codes come in handy. But that publish button is really your the ability to keep families updated, to keep the office updated as to what how students are progressing through the term. Where I was heading with that is if teachers are periodically publishing their grades and we get to the end of the term, undoubtedly there is that process that changes a student's grade right at the end, whether it be converting zeros to or converting missing scores to zeros, or that last little, you know what, this student's at an 82.47, you know, that's like 0.03 of a percentage point away, I'm going to bump their grade up to a B. So we might have these overridden grades in some of those instances where, you know, we've given a student the benefit of the doubt, and the final grade, what goes on the report card, might be different from my last published. So one of these major key steps after you've submitted grades to the office, I go to edit course grades. I've gone through here. I've made sure my grades are correct. I've added my comments. I click my send course grades to the office quick link over here on the right side, and that makes the mark official. So now this is officially sent my grades to the office. So now transcripts can get populated. Report cards can get printed out and sent home. They can get emailed home, whatever your front office staff does to create their official records. The last little piece then, what we always want to do is under file publish, is publish the results up through that day. That should probably be your end of term, so that anything that you have in the teacher grade book and anything that your families would be seeing in JMC Family or your students seeing in JMC Student is reflective of what they're also going to receive on their end of term report card. I guarantee you there is no teacher that wants to be blindsided by a report card that says one thing, but families expecting something else. So this final step of publishing all those results is going to ensure that when families log in to JMC Family, they see, all right, okay, Johnny has a B minus. Yesterday was a B, but it looks like there are some zeros that have been added. So now I understand why it's a B minus. And when I get the report card, I'm expecting a B minus as opposed to expecting a B and receiving a B minus on that final report card. So that's where many of those conversations kind of can tend to turn ugly. We want to avoid those as much as possible, which is, why this final step would be important. Brian, do you have anything to add or any questions coming through about publishing grades?
I don't see any questions. It seems to me that this procedure that you're showing here, the teacher has some control over through what date things are going to be published versus if you're publishing right off the assignment scores page, you're just publishing right up to the current date. So, I could envision maybe a scenario where a teacher has entered an assignment that's going to be happening in the future, but they haven't scored it yet. If they go ahead and publish, then that might show up as a parent might think, oh, there's a score missing there, or the teacher hasn't graded it yet. But teacher could avoid having that assignment even show up to parents by controlling the date through which they are publishing.
Yeah, and to your point, let's just test that out here. So we've got our final test or whatever. It's out of 50 points, and I'm going to date it through today's date, the 12th. I save. I'm going to go to my assignment scores page, and here's this my final test right here. And I'm just going to go ahead and add some results. 50, 45, 45, and you can see as I'm doing this, my student grades are changing. More on that check mark in just a little bit here. All right, so now that my results are complete, you can see this final test that happened on the 12th. Since I clicked that publish button, it's letting me know that everything up through the 12th is published. Now I just entered some results in here. So if we're looking on a student's progress report, that final test, which should be showing up for a student on that progress report, is not going to show up until I hit publish again. So anytime new data gets added or anytime I've made a change, so like, all right, let's say, oh, you know what, this Shakespeare test, it was 49 out of 50. It actually should have been 50 out of 50. If I don't hit publish again, my families are still going to see that 49 out of 50. So anytime I make an update that I want my families to see, I hit publish. And I can hit it from this page and it's going to publish the result, or I can go to that file publish page and it's going to publish there as well. The control that you're speaking to, Brian, is I can set the date. So let's just say, yeah, I had the final test for the 12th, but I'm not ready to share that result yet. Maybe there are one or two students that don't have their final test completed yet. So I can go under File, Publish, and I can publish up through yesterday. And now all results will be published except for this score right here. That's my final test because that happened on the 12th and the last published date is the 11th. So there is a way to control specific assignments that you don't necessarily want your families to be able to see yet. Now that we've gotten to the end of that's why I suggest this end of term process. Now that we are at the end of the term, I've submitted all my grades. I want my final gradebook grades to match what families are going to see on the report card. That last little bit that I kind of glossed over, that check mark, I think there's a belief among teachers that you have to come in here and when the grade's final, I need to check all of these little boxes, and that's not necessary. The grades are going to show up on the edit course grades page, whether this check mark is checked or not. But what this check mark does is it's going to appear anytime you override a grade. So my calculation told me that this 85% ended up being a B. I wanted to override that result and give it a B plus. And when I overrode that result, this check mark automatically appeared. I can go back to the calculated version simply by removing that check mark, and it's going to change the result back to what the percentage would have it calculated to be. I see some teachers go in there thinking, oh, I see a check mark. I need to check that to lock my grade. That's not necessarily the case. The grade is going to be, it's going to show up on the course grades page, whatever you make it on here, whether it's checked or not. So any other questions coming through, or are we ready to move on to the next process?
I think we can move on, Jake.
All right. So now printing copies of standards and benchmarks report cards. So we know some schools, particularly elementary, utilize standards-based report cards. The first big key here as a teacher is to understand what results you are using. Whether you're using end-of-term course grades or standard-based report cards. There are some additional functionality depending on which you are doing. You can print standard-based report cards from the office, or from JMC Teacher. You can only print course grades report cards from the office, which is why this isn't included in here. Um, Primarily because, elementaries mostly use the standard-based report cards, and elementary teachers are often the ones responsible for distributing those report cards, whether it be at conferences or handing them out to their students to take home. Um, the key to this, the major key to this, you can print standards and benchmarks report cards right from JMC Teacher. It is the perfect way to get a jump on crucial end of term events like parent teacher conferences without waiting for assistance from the office. You simply select the appropriate term, you select the students, you select the form size to print, and then print those standard-based report cards at your convenience. The big thing here is these reports needed to be sent to the office prior to printing your standards-based report cards, because this is, we're looking at the official record here. And the official record is not made official until, as a teacher, you have submitted your standard-based report cards to the office. So the very first step would be submitting those report cards to the office. And then once you've done that, you can print them from JMC Teacher. So in the live look, I'll show submitting those report cards. It's also in another video, but the steps for printing your report cards in JMC Teacher, you go to Reports, Print Standards and Benchmarks Report Cards. So Reports, Print Standards and Benchmarks Report Card. To get a jump on ending the term. So step one, you'll select the appropriate term from the term type drop-down list, and then place a radio button to specify the term that you are printing. Step two, you can either place a check mark in that select all checkbox to select all of your students, or you can click student names to select student report cards to print there. Step three, select the appropriate radio button from the form size box to select the paper size that best fits the size of your standards and benchmarks report card, either legal or letter. And then step four, you can click the print button to print a copy of the selected student's report card, or you can create a PDF file and save it to your computer as well. So fun fact, again, report cards printed in JMC Teacher reflect the final grades and benchmark results as submitted to JMC Office. So let's take a live look at printing copies of standards and benchmarks report cards in JMC Teacher. So we're shifting gears here. We're talking standard-based results, and typically what you would do as a teacher, so you would go to the Edit Assessments Report Card for a Student page, select the appropriate term, and now make sure that all of my results are there for my students, and then send those grades to the office. So there's that quick link. Send those grades to the office. Now all grades from my students have been sent to the office. Now that that has been accomplished, I can print standards and benchmarks report cards. So I am under, oh, I lost my pathway here. Reports, print standards and benchmarks report card. So we're under reports, print standards and benchmarks report card. Step one, I select the term type. I'm going to go quarters. Step two, I can select the student. I can select all. And deselect all, select an individual student to print an individual student's report card. And then to remove them from the list, I can just click their name. That removes them from the list. Okay. Step three, I click the print button, and it'll even tell you, the page tells you, report cards use grades from the office. What happens is teachers will get eager. They'll have their grades done, and then they'll be like, all right, now it's time to print. And then they'll come to print this page, but then no results will be in these little boxes down here. Well, it's because you haven't submitted first. So once I've submitted those grades, then those grades will show up on the printed report card. Then I can print this report card form and distribute those however I see fit at conferences or whenever. So, Brian, anything to add about maybe standard-based report cards in general, or printing, or anything like that?
No, I don't think so, Jake.
we do have, if you go to our YouTube channel, we have an extensive video on entering results onto a standard-based report card, as well as submitting those report cards at the end of the term. So if you're at that stage and you're like, oh, I really want some more information about how to add um, comments and things like that, I would advise you to check out that resource. And one of the final processes here, when we have closed out our term, we're going to get ready for the next term in JMC. So once you've completed grades for the previous term and sent them to the office, you're ready to start fresh in the new term. You're going to select the new grading term from the current term drop-down list on the File Preferences page. So we're on File Preferences, and the current term is right here at the top. We can select that upcoming term, and that's going to allow us to get ready for what's coming up ahead, as well as preparing grades from what just happened. So we're going to take a live look at this, but a really handy tool in JMC Teacher allows you to prep, work ahead or work behind, if you will. So I'm under File Preferences. I actually have my current term selected to year, so I'm going to see all courses for the entire year in all of my drop-down lists. So if I go to Edit Course Grades, for example, I pull up this drop-down list, it's showing all of my semester 1 and semester 2 courses. If I go to my scores, assignment scores page, you can see I have all of my quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4 courses. So this list is kind of long here. If I prefer not to see all of those, I want to like limit the range of courses that I have available to me. Under File Preferences, I can select a specific term, and now it's not going to clutter up my gradebook as much. So I'm under quarter 1. I'm going to go back to my assignment scores page, and now my assignment scores drop-down list is narrowed to just my quarter 1 courses. I can jump back and forth. File Preferences, I can move from quarter 1 to quarter 2 in the gradebook. I go back to scores, assignment scores now, and now it's just quarter 2 that are showing up here, and my grade books are reflective of that. So a lot of times what's happening at this point in the year, you might have a few extra days to get your grades ready, but you're moving on. You're starting that second term. You need to see what students are in your classes and things like that. So the File Preferences page allows you to bounce back and forth, or if you're like me and you want to see all of them at one time, or maybe the whole first semester at one time, you can choose the current term on the File Preferences page. Now, if I go to scores, since I've got semester 1 selected, I can see all of my quarter 1 and quarter 2 courses. So, Brian, anything to add about that File Preferences page, or
Just in general, that's a very powerful page in JMC Teacher, and teachers really try to familiarize themselves with all the options and things that they can control from that page.
Yeah, since you mentioned it, I will say, yeah, this File Preferences page, it's a great way to customize your gradebook settings. And what I mean by that, for teachers that are using competency-based grading, there are a number of options for how you want your gradebook sorted. You can sort by date, oldest to newest. You can sort by assignment name or assessment name. There are a number of rounding options as well. You can always round percentages to determine grades. Always use letter grades to calculate course grades. There are a few options in here for your grade book as well. So you can show that assignment summary. You can sort by category, which is what I have. If you're wondering, like, oh, thought it was odd that when you went to the assignment scores page, you added an assignment here. It was that final test, and it showed up like the second assessment here. then you're noticing like, oh, all of these red are showing up together. Well, it's because of my file preferences. I've got my um, assignment scores page sorted by category. I could sort it by date, and I could go oldest to newest or newest to oldest. And then on that scores page, now it's more chronological, and you can see my categories interspersed, but now my final test is the last thing that shows up in the grade book. So it's just kind of up to you as a teacher and what your preference is, how you want to display those. I kind of like categories because it just keeps all of my categories together right there. So yeah, I agree. Very powerful page. Good thing to keep some tabs on. So if there aren't any questions, that wraps it for today. As always, if you have any questions, if you would like a one-to-one training opportunity, please reach out to training@jmcinc.com, and we can jump on a Google Meet with you individually. You can share your screen, talk us through any of your questions, and we'd be glad to help you out. So, Brian, as always, thanks for joining me today. If you have any questions, please let us know. And thanks for choosing JMC. We'll catch you on the flip side.